The body of Lu Sheng began to emit intense purple flames that spread throughout the area. He started to look at her with a penetrating gaze and mentioned again that she was no longer of value. From Samenkina's perspective, our boy looked like a true monster. As the flames were spreading through the area, her gaze filled with fear, causing her to start sweating. She knew better than anyone that she was in trouble. Just before she could plan anything or try to escape, Lu Sheng's hands surrounded by flames appeared and grabbed her by the neck, of course. This caught her by surprise, making her not even have time to react. With a confused look, she began to wonder what was happening and how he was so fast. Lu Sheng's attack was a ranged attack. He extended his hand towards her, began to release his mental power, and with a smile full of revenge gave her the order to die. While he had one hand in his pocket, he started to raise the other towards the sky, causing Samenkina's body to slowly begin to float. She put both hands on her neck, clenched her teeth tightly, and due to lack of air, her body began to tremble. Lu Sheng began to strangle her even harder, and within seconds, foam started coming out of Samenkina's mouth, and tears appeared in her eyes. Our boy started to release energy and show a smile, telling her that it was time to say goodbye to this world. Lu Sheng used his power, making Samenkina's body explode in the sky, creating a big explosion. And as if this were not enough, he mocked her, saying that if she was lucky, then she could be reborn again. Once he ended her life, his earpiece started to ring and someone asked him what the instructions were. He put his hand on his ear and with a distant look began to think. The body of Samenkina transformed into ashes which began to fall to the ground. Lu Sheng turned his back on them, and with a serene expression sent them the coordinates and revealed that he had already dealt with the threat, and that they could come to clean the area. Upon hearing this, the other person was in shock and gave the order to his troops to go to the coordinates. Lu Sheng got tired of playing, and while his body was surrounded by a blue energy, he gained momentum and jumped. He clenched both fists and began to fly around the area. This time, the ambush from the Black Magic Society had allowed our boy to recognize the limit of his own strength. With pure vital energy and with the help of the power of 7 immortal cells, along with various foods, he could reach a combat capacity of 78 stars, and at full power, he estimated he could even reach 100 stars. He started to fly through the area, and with a lost look he began to think about what to do now. Some stairs that connected with the golden sky appeared. Lu Sheng began to climb them and a question came to his mind. He did not know how far Baxing's combat strength was from the true power of the martial saint. He clenched both fists and his gaze filled with determination. He had just begun to enter the Great Realm. His energy and spirit had not yet begun to merge. He still had a long way to go, meaning that he was very weak compared to the top monsters. At the same time, in Lian Sue's luxurious villa, the lights were still on, and someone revealed to her that Samenkina had failed. Upon knowing this, she lost her composure, and could not help but become enraged. With a look full of rage, she began to shout. She had invested a lot in this risky project by hiring them and could not believe that they had failed. In front of her was a table on which there was a tablet. She was on a video call with a man who wore an elegant suit. The man became somewhat nervous and asked her to remain calm, and apologized for failing the mission, explaining that they also did not expect this result. The man also revealed that they had suffered great losses. Her target had killed 4 powerful demon pillars. Her eyes were filled with rage, but still she calmed down a bit, started to look at the man and was in shock. Her gaze filled with fear, making her start to sweat like crazy. She decided not to take the blame and said that this was their problem for being weak. She grabbed the tablet with both hands and decided not to waste this opportunity. With a furious expression, she explained that since they had suffered such a great loss, it was better for them to completely finish off Lu Sheng. She also mocked the man, saying that she didn't believe they, the Black Magic Society, couldn't assassinate an level 8 boy. The man remained calm and responded that as long as any of the 3 demonic gods acted, this problem was not going to be difficult to solve. She began to stare at the man with a serious look and suggested the idea of making them act immediately. The man who was on the call with her had spots on his face. He started to show 2 fingers and revealed that she had to pay 20 times more. Upon hearing this, Lian Sue was somewhat confused and surprised at the same time. The man began to look down and explain that the reason behind the price increase was that any of the 3 great demons entering the dragon realm would cause a great uproar internationally, and could even attract the attention of the 3 9th level martial saints. There were many risk factors that could not be explained so simply, since after all, the Black Magic Society was not an organization dedicated to assassination, revealing that they had helped her this time to return a favor to her husband. Obviously, this was an insult to Lian Sue. She forcefully threw the tablet on the ground and with an angry look ordered the man to get out of her sight, thinking that they were all selfish. The tablet's screen broke into pieces, but it still kept working. The man mentioned that given that this time her actions had caused losses to the Society of Black Magic, she was going to have to make some compensation. The specific amount of the compensation was going to be sent to her email in a couple of days. Lian Sue, who was very angry, clenched her fists and stepped on the tablet, destroying it into pieces. The people from the Lion Country had done things wrong and wanted her to pay for it. She couldn't believe that they were really known as the most powerful in the world. Her gaze filled with fury. She clenched her teeth tightly and started sweating. She couldn't help but insult Sheng due to frustration since she had used many resources from her husband for revenge but still hadn't been able to finish off Sheng. She began imagining her powerful husband from behind, and her eyes filled with fear when remembering the last time she had sent Tong Qiuxing. If the peasant family had been completely killed back then, everyone would have been happy. But it turned out that peasant Sheng not only remained alive but also killed Tong Qiuxing, even involving the military department and forcing her husband to yield. She went to her room, and frustrated, she lay down on the bed. She tried to stop thinking about this issue but was unable to. In a matter of seconds, she turned her head to one side and her eyes filled with tears and rage. She clenched her teeth since her husband had also asked her to drop this matter, but she couldn't do it as she couldn't just sit idly by doing nothing. Her gaze was full of frustration and she was very upset as nothing was going the way she wanted. She could not accept losing against Sheng. With tears in her eyes, she rested her head on her hand and not long after, fell asleep. At the door of her room, there were two maids. The one with dreadlocks felt relieved to see that Lian Sue had fallen asleep after making so much noise, explaining that lately she had been like this. After venting she would fall asleep and then wake up calmer. The other maid placed her hand on her chest and with an uncertain look mentioned that it was better to prepare some food so that Lian Sue could eat something warm no matter what time she woke up. The window of Lian Sue's room was very large and had beautiful views of the city and the moon. Several hours later, it became midnight while she was sleeping peacefully. A strong smell reached her, and upon feeling this, she woke up, sat on the bed, and while she was rubbing her eyes with her fist, she began to wonder what was happening. Once she fully opened her eyes, a bald person with a disfigured face appeared and started staring at her. She covered her mouth with her hands, questioning if he was Lian Jibai. Lian Jibai's eyes began to spin in different directions, and he started to smile and blood began to come out of his mouth. And not long after, Lian Jibai's body split in half, revealing that he had died in a very tragic way. Upon seeing this, her eyes filled with fear and she was shocked and in disbelief. She couldn't believe that her brother had been murdered in such a horrible way. But luckily, all of this was a dream. She grabbed the sheet tightly, got up in the middle of the night, and due to fear began to scream. She sat up and started turning her head from side to side looking for Lian Jibai, but then realized that it had only been a nightmare. Her gaze was filled with fear and regret. She began to sweat as she remembered that she had just dreamed of Lian Jibai's death. Realizing that now he was a ghost, who had come to seek her for not avenging his death, she could not believe that even after death, he could not be at peace. She started to look at the door of the room and began to feel very thirsty, giving the order to the maids to bring a glass of water. Several minutes later, slowly, a maid opened the door of the room. She was holding a tray with a glass of water. The maid began to approach her, informing that she had brought a glass of water. Lian Sue, who had her eyes closed and was thinking about Lian Jibai, thanked the maid. Still with her eyes closed, she took the glass of water and began to drink. But several seconds later, she put her hand over her mouth due to the bad taste of the water and with a confused look asked what kind of water this was. When looking with a little attention, she saw that the glass did not contain water, but blood, and there was also a human eye inside it. At first, she was paralyzed trying to understand the situation, but then she forcefully threw the glass to the ground, quickly climbed onto the bed, and with a look full of terror, began to wonder what was happening. At that moment, Lian Jibai's son, who was now a zombie, appeared behind her. This guy was missing an eye, and with a murderous look, he lunged at her asking if his blood was delicious. Upon hearing his voice, Lian Sue turned around and she couldn't help but start crying and panic. And because of this, not long after, her eyes turned white, and she lost consciousness as she began to fall to one side. She fainted and fell onto the bed. At the same time, someone who had their body surrounded by blue energy, who was outside, began to observe her in silence. It was Sheng. He started to stare at her. He had used the world of illusions to confront Lian Sue, a level 6 martial artist, who was now extremely emotionally unstable. For our boy, this was too easy. A smile was drawn on his face and his gaze filled with joy as she was under an endless spell of nightmares. She was going to be tormented by fear and despair until dying from mental collapse. Sheng began to observe her with an exciting look and with a proud smile thought that this was the cleverest method. It would not leave traces, and it was also the best way for her not to suffer a quick death. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.